What's up, guys? What's going on? I'm Paul. This is Pauline Theology. I'm back, and we are doing our Ephesians daily devotional. Now we're on chapter 5, verse 28 through 30 in Ephesians, in our discussion over the household codes, specifically the marriage bond and relationship. And we have discovered that first, the wife is to submit, but then second, that the man is to love his wife in such a radical way that it demonstrates what Christ has done for the church. And this was not heard of in the times in which Paul was writing these things. This was not the thing. It was not the thing. But we're going to further see that Paul develops this idea even further about how a husband should love his wife, which is different and starkly different from what the value system of the time was. So let's jump into it. If you haven't read 5:28 through 30, go ahead and stop the tape, check it out, see what it has to say. And if you have, then let's jump into it, man. So what does it say? Well, we have here, it says that just as in this way, the husband ought to love his wife as his own body. He says the one who loves his wife loves himself. For nobody hates his own flesh, but they cherish it and nourish it, just as Christ and the church. It says, and we are members of his body, talking about Christ, his body. And so Paul, again, in every aspect, in every way, I went to a chapel service, and my buddy was preaching there, and he just talked about how Paul, in these last chapters, it's called a paranesis, where it's instruction and understanding. And every time that Paul gives an example, what he does is uses our faith, our hope, and our salvation in the gospel to bolster all of his sayings. And he's doing the same thing here. So he says that we should love as husbands our wives as our own body, which was uncommon then as well. It says that our bodies we cherish and we nourish. And this is obviously a general statement, because there are some people who do not love their body. They hate their bodies. But in a normal sense, in a normal way, all we do is seek to preserve, to nourish, to enjoy, and to flourish our own bodies as men, especially as men in that day where everything was about masculinity, strength. Because if they didn't present themselves as being some sort of way, their masculinity would be diminished and their shame would increase. And that's one of the things I didn't say actually in the last episode, I believe, is that that one of the things that Christ had did was when he died on the cross, he was naked, beaten, spit on, and hung on this death instrument of immense torture in front of people, tons of people. And that is a humiliating thing. Christ did that on our behalf, that he would humiliate himself on our behalf. All glory to God, be the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. But also this example for a man to do would be shameful. And in a society where there's shame versus honor, then shame would be the last thing they wanted to do. And so for him, the husband to sacrifice for his wife would bring upon himself shame in the eyes of others. And so this is something they would not want to do. However, this is something that Paul calls them to do as people of the way, as people who follow Christ, as people who serve the living God. And so in the same way, like I said, this is the flesh part where it says that we share the same flesh as husband and wife. And so he's called the husband to love his wife in such a way that he would give her honor, that he would raise her up to flourish, to receive glory. That is the way in which we should be loving our wives. And he says, because nobody hates his own body, but nourishes it and cherishes it. And then he connects this with the way that Christ and the church are a body. He says that we are members of his body as the church, man. And he doesn't say this on some offshoot, man. He's about to go and explain it, which we'll talk about in the next episode. But this is no offshoot. You see, the comparison of the marriage bond and the bond between Christ and the church is such a powerful thing. We are members of Christ's body. That's a wonderful thing to recognize and understand. And it says that in the way that a husband should cherish his wife, this is how Christ cherishes and nourishes us. He strengthens us, gives us power. What did it say about what Christ has done, that he may dwell in our hearts, that he may give us the fullness of understanding, that he has given us the Spirit so that we can feel all and be sealed, that he has died for us. These are the things that Christ has done, which Paul has talked about, that he is the ruling power and has dominion all over these powers for protection. These are the things that Christ has done for the church because we are his body. Man, that's amazing stuff. Anyway, what's to say about God? That Christ cares deeply about us. God cares deeply about us because we are part of his body. We are a part of him. We've been incorporated, is the word, that we have been moved into him so that we share in the things that Christ shares in. And so he deeply loves us. What's to say about man? Well, it says that husbands ought to love their wives as their own selves in a way that's different from the world. We should be looking at Christ as the example of how Christ loves us, his body, his church. And then this is how we should be loving our wives as husbands. But how do we apply these truths to our lives? Well, I think we should look and see what kind of examine as husbands. We should examine our lives. We should see how we are loving our wives in a way and how we're displaying this love. And does it reflect the love of Christ? Does it look like the love that Christ has showed in his sacrifice? Does it look like the way that Christ has given things to the church in order for her to grow and flourish? Is that what our love as husbands look like to our wives? To encourage, to strengthen, to keep straight, to walk the path of righteousness? Is this what it looks like in our relationship with our wives, husbands? And then also contemplate, for those who aren't in this relationship, just think about the depth of what Christ had to do in order to make us a part of himself, in order for us to be a part of his body, and that we are his body, and that he cares for us, man. And that as his body, what are we to do? What's the goal? To share his love with others. I appreciate you guys for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.